Hello, this is Steve, and I'm reading from Decanter Magazine. Costières de Nîmes, AOC, celebrating the Rhone's southernmost appellation. From bold Syrah-driven reds to distinctive whites, this famed AOC is one to watch. Costières de Nîmes is one of the most southerly appellation is the most southerly appellation in the Rhone Valley, nestled on the edge of the Rhone Delta in the hills overlooking the Camargue, with vineyards as little as 20 kilometers, 12.5 miles, to the Mediterranean Sea. The appellation is best understood as two halves, either side of a large hill, a large south-facing half facing the sea, and a north-facing half looking toward the historic Roman city of Nîmes. A terroir shaped by a distinct microclimate. The closest AOC to the Mediterranean Sea, Costières de Nîmes, is shaped by its long hours of sunshine and wide diurnal range. Moderating, maritime cooling breezes refresh in the southern half of the appellation, while the fierce Mistral dominates the northern half. These winds, combined with very dry summers, allow for exceptionally low disease pressure in the vineyards. Wines are characterized by a distinct freshness combined with intensity of flavors. Soils are clay or clay limestone, helpful for water retention, covered by the area's typical rolled pebbles or galets rouges, deposited by the Rhone and Durance rivers. Key varieties. Wine production in the region is dominated by red and rosé, 47% and 42% respectively in 2023. Made from the traditional Rhone varieties Grenache, Syrah, and Mourvèdre, whites account for an increasing share, 11% in 2023, largely based on Grenache Blanc, Marsanne, and Roussanne, with Viognier playing an important secondary role. Innovation and biodiversity, looking to the next generation. This is one of the Rhone Valley's greenest AOCs. In 2023, 18% of production was certified organic, 12% biodynamic, and another 55% HVE3. Younger generations are bringing exciting new developments in vineyard practices and innovative approaches. Winemaking is modern here as well. Excessive new oak is rare, with many producers opting for fresher, lighter styles. Reds tend to be ripe and silky, and the whites fresh and crisp. A unique cultural heritage. At a crossroads between Spain and Italy, this southern French appellation represents the true spirit of the Mediterranean. This landscape of vibrant colors is home to a celebrated enogastronomic heritage built on 2,500 years of rich history. The following four whites showcase the region's unique combination of freshness and complexity, while the reds bring Syrah to the fore, together with Grenache, Cinsault, and Carignan. Pepe Raventos. A single-minded commitment to sustainability and terroir, combined with business acumen and first-class communication skills, have made his one of the most interesting and divisive names in Spanish wine. In the end, though, all he wants is for the land to speak through his wines. The road to where Pepe Raventos is now neither obvious nor straightforward. Born into one of Catalonia's most storied wine families, linked to the very origin of the region's sparkling wine tradition, he didn't set out to become the heir of his family's legacy. But a combination of business challenges, a sense of duty, and late-found vocation brought him back to take the helm of Raventos y Blanc. From a place of inevitability, defined by necessity, he built an idiosyncratic path, eventually becoming a brand himself, not least through the much-touted collaborations with actor Cameron Diaz and chef and restaurateur Jose Andres. Today, Pepe Raventos stands for the stubborn advocacy of sustainability and down-to-earth sophistication. Behind the name, there's a man who perhaps defied even the expectations he had for himself, while embracing a lineage of innovative and entrepreneurial descent. Groundbreaking ancestry. Having lived on the grounds of the Raventos estate, Can-Cordenu, just outside of Sant-Sadurní d'Anoia, the epicenter of Spanish sparkling wine production, since at least 1497, the Raventos family is itself arguably part of the terroir of Penedès. So inextricably linked is it with the establishment and development of its viticultural identity. The estate's 90 hectares have been famed farmed for more than 5 centuries with the expected combination of Mediterranean crops, cereals, olive trees, and of course grapes, amid woodland. However, a pivotal moment for the family and the region took place in 1872. Following a trip to Champagne, Josep Raventós y Fatxó decided to produce Spain's first sparkling wine, re-fermented in the bottle at Can Cordoniu using the estate's Xarel·lo grapes. This small step eventually led to the creation of the cava powerhouse that took the name of the family's homestead. Joseph's grandson, Manuel Raventós y Fatxó, alongside his wife, Montserrat Blanc, steered the company throughout the troubled first decades of the 20th century, laying the groundwork for their son's momentous leadership. With Josep Maria Raventós y Blanc, 1922 to 1986, Pepe Raventós' grandfather at the helm, Cordoniu expanded spectacularly during the 1960s, and largely thanks to his efforts, and with him as president of the Consell Regulador del Cava, the Cava DO was created in 1972. However, disillusionment set in as the brand and appellation grew in volume and the connection with both terroir and growers withered. Raventós y Blanc eventually sold his share of Cordoniu and alongside his son Manuel Raventós y Negre, founded Raventós y Blanc in 1986, hoping to give terroir and sustainable viticulture a renewed prominence. Joseph died just a few days before his namesake winery opened, leaving the project solely in Manuel's hand, until Pepe joined in 2001. Father and son then became accomplices in a relentless quest to bring the sense of place to their sparkling wines to the fore, which culminated in the company's desertion from the Cava DO and the creation of the Cónica del Riu Anoia, a proposed new DO of which Raventós y Blanc remains the sole producer, in 2012. Growing up, it wasn't Pepe Raventós' intention to join his father at the family estate. As the 21st generation of one of Catalonia's foremost wine families, he wasn't sure what made him tick. He went on to study business administration at Estad in Barcelona, because that's what those who don't know what they want to do study. After completing a master's in international management in the U.S., Raventós joined Catalonian residential care company Grupo SAR, overseeing marketing and sales. Although this allowed him to combine his academic training with a passion for social work, the family legacy came knocking. Both his father and the business were going through a difficult period, which had already forced the sale in 1989 of Château de Fleurs d'Aiguille, renamed Château d'Aiguille, following the sale, a sister estate in the Côte de Bordeaux, and Pepe was asked to step in and up. The rest, as they say, is history. Pepe sought the improvement of his wine knowledge, first with a 2-year sommelier course at Barcelona's Hospitality School, then a master's in viticulture and enology at the Universidad Complutense de Madrid, internships with the likes of Loire Maverick, Dieter Dagenau, Hubert Lamé, Saint-Aubin Burgundy, and Gaston Chiquet of Champagne followed. These experiences lit the flames he'd been missing in his earlier years and allowed him to develop a personal philosophy through learning untethered to inherited assumptions. It's a journey to produce ever better wines that started back then and continues, he said. It's an ongoing process of learning and discovery. Carving his own place and persona upon his return to the Raventós estate, where he now oversees all aspects of the business, was informed both by his family's indelible and complex legacy and his own unorthodox path. Everything is evolution, the way of understanding our land and history, and how to interpret the potential of our soil's varieties. All this has evolved since I joined, Pepe explains, but the Raventós y Blanc project rested from its inception on 2 pillars, quality and activism. When my grandfather left Cordoniu, and my father built the winery at our historical estate, the goal was always quality, based on the belief that we have a terroir for sparkling winemaking that is as good, if not better, than Champagne. At Raventós y Blanc, Pepe took his father's focus on sustainability several steps further, championing biodynamic practices and regenerative agriculture. What I've done is to overcome a period of confusion in the Spanish wine industry, focus merely on productivity, and bring us back to the ancestral way of working and understanding our land, to live and work in harmony with nature, seeking a balance between animals, plants, and man. That's ultimately what I'm trying to achieve. You might label it as biodynamic, regenerative. Ultimately, it is ancestral knowledge, he concludes. He evokes childhood memories as important reference points. I remember my father had 8 horses that plowed all of the estate. We pioneered the reintroduction of animal traction and are currently working at 8 hectares solely with horses. My goal is to have 5 or 6 horses working the entire farm, supported only by an electric tractor. His convictions are reflected in the focus and unapologetic minerality that sparkling wines of Reventos y Blanc, all vintage releases, produced with local varieties, certified organic and aged for a minimum of 18 months or Lee, have become known for, and in his unwavering belief that Conca del Riu, Anonia, deserves to be championed as a leading appellation for sparkling winemaking. Some might consider Pepe's demeanor to spring from hubris, others from a much-needed self-confidence and determination that many Spanish producers should use as inspiration. Viticulture and winemaking aren't the only areas Pepe has tended to. His leadership has also been about strengthening the brand and commercial viability of the business. And when I joined my father, the business was in ruins. I had to start making still wines to save it and stop losing money. Not one to leave challenges unmet or opportunities missed, Pepe came across and bought an abandoned properties, Can Sumoy, that now serves as the production base for still wines. The 400-hectare estate has also become a case study of sorts, a way for Pepe to apply his farming philosophy and sustainability practices holistically and at scale. Further to Reventos y Blanc and Can Sumoy, Pepe also produces experimental releases under the Vins Pepe Reventos label. These are wines that I make in the garage, very low intervention and very low volumes. It's a lab of mistakes, he says. All we learn from them then informs our work at Reventos y Blanc and Can Sumoy. Pepe quotes Che Guevara to justify his relentlessness. Be idealistic, dream the impossible. It is indeed at a crossroads of pragmatic efficiency and poetic rebelliousness that Pepe emerges as such an interesting figure. The older I get, the more passionate I am about what I do. The demands imposed by climate change seem to further justify his efforts. What these changes are telling us is that we need to rediscover and really focus on indigenous varieties, and to pay more attention to what happens in the vineyard as part of a complex ecosystem. Pepe Reventos' quest is perhaps more construction of an ethos, and particularly interesting journey of self-discovery, than the development of a winemaking program. The wines he produces might simply be a fortunate byproduct of an attempt to discover the meaning of the good life. Contemporary and historic, 5 from Pepe Reventos. Reventos y Blanc, Mas de Serral, Brut Nature, Conca del Riu, Anonia, 2013, 97 points. 160 pounds at Liberty Wines, 175 to 196 US. Pepe Reventos' most personal sparkling and de facto tête de cuvée, hailing from Clos del Serral, a north and northwest facing 1.71 hectare vineyard planted in 1954 with Zarello and Bastard Negre. Disgorged in May 2024, having spent 115 months on the lees. Outstanding detail and concentration with a muscular core of wet stone, lemon curd, quince, cherry, and cherry pith. Long finish with lasting notes of toasted almonds, nectarine, and preserved lemons. Biodynamic. Drink 2025 to 2032. Alcohol 12.5%. Reventos y Blanc. Textures de Pedra Blanc de Negres, Brut Nature, Conca del Riu, Anonia, 2020, 94 points. 44 pounds, which is about 60 US. True to its name, this is an unapologetically textural and mineral wine, with a pointed zestiness softened by creamy, lively mousse. Pink grapefruit, blood orange, toasted almonds, and red apple peel mingle in the mouth, supported by a muscular acidity. Pickled walnuts, wet stones, moss, orange sherbet, and pith play in the background, broad-shouldered and yet very elegant. Biodynamic. Drink 2025 to 2030. Reventos y Blanc. De la Finca Brut Nature, Conca del Riu, Anonia, 2021, 93 points, 34 pounds. Lovely precision and focus built around a framework of filigree minerality, subtle nose, oyster shell and lemon zest topped with hints of rose and green apple, razor-sharp acidity on the palate. The fruit core drenched in white grapefruit juice ends with a delicious saline tail. Biodynamic. Drink 2025 to 2029. Vins Peperoventos, Viña del Nugur, Alt Zarello, Conca del Riu, Anonia 2022. Energy and textural complexity in this Zarello, partially fermented in Foudre, amphora, and barrel, with 8 months aging on the lees prior to bottling, not fined or filtered. Layers of ripe yellow orchard fruit, glazed citrus, and toasted nuts emerge. Vibrant nuances of glazed ginger and aniseed. Juicy mid-palate weight, then a precise, zesty focus that carries the long finish. Biodynamic. Drink 2025 to 2027. Kansumi, Sumoi, Ganaxta, Sumol, Penedez, 2022, 92 points, 25 pounds. The intense florality of Garnacha is woven into Sumol's intense earthiness in this equal blend of the two grape varieties. Parma violets and crushed rose petals hover over petrichor wet tobacco leaves, smoked bacon, and olive tapenade. Underneath, a thick, juicy layer of plum, bramble, and mulberry. Vibrant acidity leaves a zesty impression on the back palate. Drink 2025 to 2030. Putting down roots. Why a range of Italian grape varieties are flourishing in Australia's soils and what the future holds for them. How long is a piece of string, quips Michael Dalzotto of Dalzotto Wines in Victoria's King Valley wine region. A pithy yet fitting response to a big question. What's the next big thing for Italian varieties in Australia? I have a personal preference for Pinot Bianco, he adds, but Fiano and Montepulciano are definitely appealing to the consumers we show them to. These are just a few of the Italian varieties flourishing in Australian vineyards and ultimately in Australian wine glasses. To many outside the country, however, this evolution might come as a surprise. The global perception of Australian wine still defaults to two extremes: inexpensive, fruity bulk wine and bold, premium Barossa Shiraz. And while these two styles are undeniably significant within the context of Australian wine's journey, they simply don't reflect the full spectrum of the country's ever-evolving wine landscape. Today, Italian varieties flow through the veins of Australian wine, having found an eminently comfortable home while exemplifying the country's growing diversity and adaptability. But this shift didn't happen overnight. Italian varieties have only gained serious traction in Australia over the last 3 decades, following more than 170 years of dominance by French grapes. Over its rich vinous history, Australia has finely tuned iconic French varieties such as Pinot Noir, Cabernet Sauvignon, Syrah or Shiraz, and Chardonnay, often rivaling the best from their Old World counterparts, much to the chagrin of the French. Yet this historical focus on French grapes belies the significant cultural influence of Italian immigrants on Australian life. La Dolce Vita. Italians were amongst Australia's earliest European immigrants, arriving in waves during the 1850s gold rush era and again after World War II as part of government's program such as the Populate or Perish initiative. Having introduced the hedonistic nation to La Dolce Vita into the Australian psyche, their culinary contributions, from espresso and pasta to pizza and prosciutto, are now deeply embedded in Australian daily life to the point of ubiquity. Over the last 30 years, Italian grape varieties have joined this legacy, bringing a youthful, exploratory spirit to the Australian wine scene. So far, the rise of Italian varieties has added to the allure of wine, says Kathleen Quealy of Quealy Wines, also in Victoria, and a pioneer of Pinot Grigio in Australia. The fun and accessibility of Prosecco, the understated style and pleasure of a premium Pinot Grigio, a fresh Fiano, the power and natural acidity of Sangiovese. These wines offer consumers a break from the usual suspects, catering to a wider range of preferences. Victoria's King Valley region is considered the home of Italian wine styles in Australia. Italian immigrants initially farmed tobacco and hops in the area before declining demand and the introduction of government regulations restricting the cultivation and sale of tobacco in the 1970s and 80s forced them to pivot toward grape growing. Inspired by the success of regional leader Brown Brothers, these producers began to plant Italian varieties, in the process reconnecting with their heritage. Now pioneering families such as Dalzotto, Pizzini, Politini, Sam Miranda, and Cavdon have established the region as a hub for high-quality wines made with Italian grapes. One of the key offerings is Prosecco, a synonym for the northern Italy's Glera grape, permitted as a grape name within Australia. with various brands experiencing considerable success in keeping with the enormous global growth of Italy's sparkling Prosecco category. Australia's varied climate replicates the similarly wide-ranging climate of Italy, thus accommodating any and all Italian varieties. Fiano and Aglianico, for example, thrive in warm coastal regions reminiscent of their southern Italian origins. McLaren Vale in South Australia is a prime example, now with more than 2 decades' experience cultivating Italian varieties. I think it has, at the very least, brought us white varieties that fit our climate so much better, says Karina Wright of Oliver's Tranga in McLaren Vale. Drought-tolerant, high natural acidity, thick-skinned, disease-tolerant, later ripening, especially Fiano. It has also widened our smorgasbord of red varieties, with Aglianico, Nero d'Avola, and Montepulciano leading the way. In fact, according to a 2023 article published online by the McLaren Vale Grape Wine and Tourism Association, Fiano is McLaren Vale's third most planted white grape variety. Not only do Fiano wines work climatically, holding their acid, but they suit our coastal foodie lifestyle so well. Plus, stylistically, they can go from super light sparkling wines all the way through to uber textural expressions of deliciousness. And it's more widespread than that. Other South Australian regions, such as Adelaide Hills, Riverland, Clare Valley, and Barossa Valley, have all taken up a multitude of Italian varieties. Victoria's Heathcote region has had considerable success with Sangiovese, and Beechworth is making a name for its high-quality Nebbiolo wines. Make no mistake, however, this growth category is by no means limited to the iconic grapes. From Falanghina to Moscato Giallo, Rofosco to Piedrioso, Australia doesn't shy away from obscure and varieties now considered mainstream or foreign fruits not so long ago. The Chalmers family has played a pivotal role in this transformation. Over the past 30 years, they have not only refined their own warm climate viticulture and winemaking in the Heathcote and Murray-Darling regions, but have also led the charge in importing Italian clones into Australia. Thanks to their efforts, varieties such as Fiano, Vermentino, and Nero d'Avola have flourished, and for the right reasons. At Chalmers, we try not to be part of trends and steer away from them where possible, says Tennille Chalmers, second generation and part owner of the family business. We keep our focus on the grape growing, then making wines and wine styles that scream of who we are, what we believe in, and wine that speaks out of that variety, personality, and flavor from the place in which it's grown. A most admirable aspect of the Chalmers' ambition is their consideration of the greater good rather than it being a solely self-serving pursuit. We love seeing Italian varieties in Australia find their new homes, where growers, winemakers, and wine lovers embrace them because of their suitability and to those newfound sites. The Chalmers family was also involved in founding one of Australia's most important wine shows, the Australian Alternative Varieties Wine Show, which is held each year in the city of Mildura. In 1999, Bruce Chalmers, well-known local chef Stefano da Pieri, and viticulturalist in the Chalmers Nursery Dr. Rod Bonfignoli, initiated the Sangiovese Awards, which morphed into the Australian-Italian Wine Show in 2000, before landing on its current name the following year. Along with providing important feedback to producers working with alternative varieties, the show has been critical in shining a light on alternative varieties as a category within Australian wine, with Italian varieties chief among them. Mark Woolpool of Beechworth-based Fighting Gully Road has been another huge proponent of Italian wine varieties in Australia. His work in developing Sangiovese has been critical to the grape's local rise, having imported various clones far superior to those previously planted, ultimately resulting in much higher quality expressions. Today he makes benchmark examples, but also excels with other alternative grapes. Recently, his 2023 Verdicchio won a slew of awards at the Northeast Victorian Wine Challenge, including Wine of Show. It's interesting to consider alternatives from France, says Walpole. Picpoul, Grenache Blanc, and the like are getting a bit of airing at the moment, but I'm yet to see a wine with a wow factor. Italian varieties seem able to deliver that. As for the future, Quealy sees a bright one. The best Italian varieties awaits Australia. The importance of the array of genetic material necessary to begin the time-consuming journey of matching variety to regions really only began 25 years ago. How long is a piece of string? Hard to say, but one thing is certain. Italian varieties have added a vibrant new one to Australia's wine bow. Wine myths debunked. Accepted wisdom isn't always especially wise. Here are 4 examples from the world of wine. Decanting is only for red wines. While red wines often benefit from a bit of air to soften their tannins, whites, rosés, and even orange wines can also get in on the action. You see, decanting is all about 3 things: evaporation of alcohol and other volatile compounds, oxidation, and keeping sediment away. Take reductive wines such as certain Rieslings or Sauvignon Blancs, which may initially seem aromatically muted or restrained upon opening. Decanting them lets them breathe and reveal those fresh, fruity, floral aromas. The same applies to rosés and orange wines with extended skin contact, which often benefit from exposure to air to help fully express their character. Decanting is also great for unfiltered pet nat or minimal intervention bottles, which can have a little sediment that you'd prefer not to sip on. So next time you pop open a bottle, consider more than its color when facing the decanting dilemma. Your wine and your taste buds will thank you. Wine should be stored horizontally. For years, we've been told that wine should be stored horizontally. It has been the tradition, and it helps keep the cork moist, and it's definitely convenient, but is it actually necessary? As it turns out, the position of your wine bottle might not be as critical as once thought. In 2018, Dr. Miguel Cabral, Director of R&D for Amorim, the world's largest cork producer, said during a discussion that it's a myth that you need to store a bottle on its side, suggesting that there was enough humidity in the headspace to keep the cork from drying out. And recent studies have shown that while horizontal storage may help reduce oxidation and improve flavors in some wines, it's not a universal rule. For example, although a study published in 2022 found that when vintage port is stored horizontally, it has higher tannin levels and richer flavor than when stored vertically, a 2005 study on dry white wines found that bottle orientation during storage had no discernible effects on the composition and sensory characteristics of the wines. And other studies have shown the effect on oxygen ingress rates. When you factor in modern closures with controlled permeability, such as screw caps, bottle orientation has even less impact. In the end, cellar conditions and closure type play the pivotal role in preserving your wine. Legs or tears indicate quality. Watching those legs or tears trickle down your glass after you've taken a sip or given it a swirl can be mesmerizing. Many people believe they reveal something about a wine's quality, but they don't. The science here is simple but exciting. Legs are a result of what's known as the Marangoni effect, whereas fluids flow from areas of low surface tension to those with a higher surface tension. Wine is largely a mixture of alcohol and water. Alcohol has a lower surface tension and a higher volatility than water, and some of the alcohol evaporates from the film of wine on the glass, and the liquid left behind has a higher surface tension. More water, less alcohol, which causes it to pull in the surrounding fluid. Eventually, the fluid's weight excess of the force effect and gravity cause it to drip back down. So the legs can tell us something about the wine's alcohol content. More alcohol usually means more prominent legs, but nothing about its quality. So the next time you sip, marvel at the tears before they fade, but remember that your palate is where the real magic happens. This is Steve, and I've been reading from Decanter Magazine.